Walks up to her father, lifts her skirt up and says, "Papa, can you please touch me?" A 50-year-old woman washes her hands 40 times a day. A 25-year-old man is absolutely confused about his sexuality. Is he a heterosexual or a homosexual? A 45-year-old man has not been able to have decent, trustful relationships ever in his life. Not even with his wife. Not even with his children. I can give you endless examples. And what is this? So the 7-year-old girl who went up to her father later on found out that the liftman in her building was sexually abusing her every time she went down to play in the lift. The 50-year-old woman had been sexually abused in her childhood and was trying to get the dirt off her hands every single day. The 25-year-old man, confused about his sexuality, had been sodomized as a child by his uncle for a number of years and is confused. So am I a homosexual because I was sexually abused in my childhood, or am I a heterosexual? The 45-year-old man who's not been able to have any trusting relationships, sexually abused as a child by his teacher. The sense of betrayal, the sense of stigma, the shame, the guilt that children, as they grow up as adolescents, as adults, are not able to wash off from their lives. That's the impact of child sexual abuse. In very many ways, it affects people's lives. Depending on the severity of the abuse, who the abuser is. If the abuser is a family member, we've seen that impact is more because the sense of betrayal is even more. The very person you trusted has violated your own body, your own space. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically, sexually, all the aspects of an individual's life get impacted. In a child, you can see a drop in academic performance to urinary infections to pregnancy. In an adult, you can see very many things like not being able to have intimate relationships, complete withdrawal from sex, or promiscuous behavior, two different extremes. Addiction, extremely common. Survivors tend to take on drugs, alcohol, even try and attempt suicide. Anxiety, depression, all kinds of symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder can be seen in people who've been sexually abused. What is it? Any sexual act for the sexual gratification of that more powerful person is sexual abuse. It can range from any kind of penetration to non-penetration to even exhibitionism, to showing children pornography or making them watch a sexual act, a whole range of things. And how much is it happening? The National Child Abuse Study of 2007, done by the Department of Women and Child in India, independent studies conducted by NGOs in the country, they all show a commonality. What is it? Every second person in India has been exposed to some form of sexual abuse, which means that in this very auditorium, half of us have experienced it. Which means that every second person from India watching this video has experienced it. Yes, it's that much. Why? Because in our country, there's such a taboo around sex and sexuality. We just don't talk about it. It's all brushed under the carpet. Child sexual abuse is such a stark reality. And isn't it totally unacceptable? But here we are in a society, in a country, with millions and millions of children and adult survivors who are suffering in silence because we're not willing to acknowledge the issue. We're not willing to accept that this is a problem we have and we need to do something about it. And it's not just India. It's a problem world over. And we need to do something about it. So what can you do? Talk. 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 Talk as much as we can. Bring about the awareness that yes, this is an issue. This is happening with children. If you come to know of a friend, of a relative who's experienced this, give a helping hand. Support that person. Give positive affirmations. Get that person to go for counseling or any kind of therapeutic support. My own awareness came not very far into the past. Just 9 years ago. And how? I watched a play. A play which showed the trauma of an adult survivor. A girl who had been sexually abused over a number of years by her uncle. I was completely shocked. And I came out of that hall thinking, if there is a play, it needs to be a social problem. Till then, having born and brought up in a city like Bombay, I had no clue. And I was like, oh my God. So how many people really know about this issue? And I went on to the net, tried to search who are the organizations working on it, how much awareness is there, and I found that hardly any awareness. Hardly any talk about it. And that's when I vowed, I will do something about it. 2 years later, we started working on it. 2 of us who started creating awareness amongst parents about the issue. We started counseling adult survivors of sexual abuse. And that's how the journey began. Where are we today? We're now, 6 years later, a team of 30 professionals, the largest in India, working on the issue in a very focused manner. Our team comprises of psychologists, counselors, social workers, and professionals like me who have really nothing to do with the social sector. I'm a graphic designer. But currently, I run Arpan full-time. We've grown to do many intervention and prevention programs. We go and do awareness sessions with parents, teachers, all kinds of stakeholders with children. We work with NGOs, mental health professionals. We build their capacities so that in their environments, they can give support to children. They can have the ability to look for symptoms in children because children don't talk about it. What do we teach children as young children as well? So this is a head, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, chest, legs. We've skipped one whole part of the body because we're not comfortable teaching that. And that's what we need to do. Build that comfort, not create any shame around our body. Our body is wonderful. And that's how we need to make children feel. So we conduct personal safety lesson plans in schools with children. We work with the age group of 6 years to about 11 years. And we teach children how unique and special they are, how they can identify feelings and use their feelings to identify differences between safe and unsafe situations, safe and unsafe touches, and in the event that if somebody attempts to touch them in an unsafe manner, they can say no and get away from that situation. And even if they couldn't say no, think no in the head till someday they'll be able to say no. And then go and tell a trusted adult about it. But most importantly, we tell the child, it's not your fault. And that we have seen has really helped children overcome what they've experienced in the past. Very recently, a 72-year-old woman came up to one of the Arpan trainers during an awareness session with parents and said, you know, for the first time in 72 years, I am hearing that it wasn't my fault. Can I come back for your session next Saturday? I want to hear it again. I want to hear you say that it wasn't my fault. Those are some of the outcomes we're creating. Helping adults understand that it was never their fault. They do not need to live with that shame, that guilt, that dirt that they feel. We help them through counseling and therapy. We see children who come up to our trainers and say, oh, ma'am, I never knew I was special. Thank you for teaching me that I'm special. During the program or after the program, they will come to our trainers and say, you know what? I was walking on the road and there was this man who was trying to come after me. I turned around and I said no, and I got away from the situation. I ran and I told my mother about what happened. In a review we conducted 6 months after what we taught children, 100% correct answers were given about differences between safe and unsafe touches by children. We could see that there is retention value. Parents have come up and shared with us, you've opened our communication channels with children. We now feel the comfort to talk to our children about various things which we'd never done before. We now know that children will be safe. Adults across, through our awareness sessions, come and share their stories of abuse. For the first time, most of them are sharing for the first time about their sexual abuse. We envisage that we will continue to reach out to thousands and thousands of more children and adults through our work. It's not been an easy journey, but the high that we get is to see the change we're able to see in an individual's life because of something we were able to do. We even work with the most sexually traumatized rescued minors who've been sold into the flesh trade and then rescued. And we do long-term psychotherapeutic work with them. And it's amazing to see the kind of empowerment that has come into them. You know, an 18-year-old girl who's about to get married tells her fiancé, I think you have issues you need to address. I think you've undergone some trauma. And you know what? I will only marry you if you start going for counseling. That's the kind of self-awareness and empowerment we see in these very girls who had probably the worst violations that one could ever think of. Another girl will go up to another girl and say, why don't you have lunch? I've brought you something to eat. And this other girl will said, go away. I don't want to eat anything. And this other girl tries to coddle her and say, no, why don't you eat something? You've not eaten anything. And this girl again says, no, go away. I don't want to eat anything. And then this other girl says, you're not really angry at me, are you? You're angry about something else, but that's going on in your mind. That understanding, even we do not have in our everyday lives. Some girls who were slitting their hands have stopped slitting their hands. Adults who were about to commit suicide have been able to find a pathway, a process of recovery, a process of healing, and take on to another journey. That gives us the high. I've never tried alcohol, so I can't give you a comparative analysis of which is a bigger high. But for us as a team, for me as an individual, to see that change in people gives me a high. No amount of numbers gives me a high. We've reached out to 30,000 children and adults so far. Over 60,000 children and adults indirectly so far. But that doesn't give me that high. All those awards that you heard about, that doesn't give me the high. Thousands of dollars we've raised, that doesn't give me the high. But to hear a story, a change, a little change even if it is, in an individual's life, that gives me a high. And that makes each one of us at Arpan wake up in the morning and get to work. The burnout is high, the emotional residue, the mental residue is high, because every single day, these are the stories of pain and trauma that we hear. But yet, nothing stops us. Because we know that somewhere we're playing that role of helping people. And that is inspiring. To play that role of a catalyst and to see people empowered themselves to bring a positive change in their own lives is inspiring. And that is so beautiful. And that, I think, is an idea worth spreading. Thank you.